right? Traditional estate planning is essential but not enough, as it does not consider what will happen to the family and legacy after distribution. So traditional estate planning says my job as a estate owner, as a wealth owner, is to ensure that the right amount of wealth goes to the right person after my death. And after that, whatever happens is not in my control. But holistic estate planning says no, my job does not end by just giving wealth to the right person. I have also to ensure that the person who acquires this wealth has the capacity, capability, skill to look after this wealth. So my job does not end by just giving. I have to ensure the people who get this wealth are able to take care of this wealth. And this is very, very important because there's a fact. And fact is 70% of a family's health wealth is lost by the first generation, and 90% of it is lost by the second generation. Wealth does not continue for long in the family, and it's a global phenomena. Chinese call it paddy field to paddy field in 3 generations. English call it shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Irish call it potato field to potato field in 3 generations. That means one generation creates the wealth, second one consumes it, and the third one starts from where the first one started. And it has been happening so long and is likely to happen in your family also. But what do you want? You want that your wealth continues in your family forever. You want that your wealth always stays in your family. My great grandmother gave me the only way, the only mantra to ensure that this wealth always remains in your family. And that mantra was a saying in UP villages, Uttar Pradesh villages, which is a very common saying there, which is something like this: Poot sapoot to kyon sanjoy, poot kapoot to kyon sanjoy, which literally means if your son is good, why do you accumulate wealth? And if your son is not good, then also why do you accumulate wealth? In both the reasons, there is no need of wealth. The question is, what should be the purpose of your wealth? Your wealth has only one purpose which it can fulfill, and that is the human capital in the family. This wealth can incentivize, give facilities, freedom to the human capital in your family to become capable of creating their own wealth or maybe taking care of your wealth. Apart from this, this wealth can never ever do anything else. And if you don't have capable children who are able to take care of your wealth, whatever wealth you will leave behind would be destroyed one day. The only thing which you can ensure with your wealth is leaving behind inheritors, successors who can succeed in life, have the capability to succeed in life, right? So let me now go to some concerns, and we are now going to the technical part of estate planning. And the first concern is about family concerns. And the first concern is it a risk or not? Just tell me. Risk is that after your death, your assets might not fully pass on to your spouse, because if you die without a will, other people apart from your spouse are your legal heirs. So, do you know your legal heirs? Do you know who are your legal heirs today? Because I know most of you have not prepared a will. And suppose if you die today, how do you know how would your wealth be distributed? So it is distributed as per the religion and gender. So assuming that most of you are Hindus and male, I'll be telling both for male and female, but assuming you are a Hindu male, which most of you appear to me right now. So who are the legal heirs of a Hindu male? And if you are a Hindu male, please note down your legal heirs. I'm just telling you who are your legal heirs. Just note down, it will become very clear. Just note it on the piece of paper, who are your legal heirs. So on the top, the first name you have to write is the name of your mother if she is alive. On the top, write the name of your mother if she is alive. If you are lucky enough to have a mother who is alive, please write her name on the top. And I'm telling your legal heirs if you are a Hindu male, right? So write the name of your mother on the top. Below it, write the name of your wife if she is alive, your spouse if she is alive. Below it, write the name of all your children who are alive today, whether they are son or daughter, married or unmarried, biological or adopted, living with you, living far away from you, any child who is alive. Write the name of all your children. Now below it, if there is any child of yours who has passed away, but the child who has passed away is survived by either a child or spouse, then write the name of the child who has passed away. So last point I will repeat again. If any child of yours has passed away, but the child who has passed away is survived by any spouse or a child, then write the name of the child who has passed away. Now count the total number of people you have written on that piece of paper. Just count how many people you have written on the paper. Mother who is alive, spouse is alive, children who are alive, and children and spouse of dead children if they are alive, write the name of the child who has passed away. Now how many people you have written? Just some people, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now after your death, your wealth would be equally distributed among all of these people. If you have written 4 names, equally to 4 of them. If you have written 3 names, equally to 3 of them. That's the Hindu law. That's the Hindu law. The Hindu law says in absence of wills, these would be your legal heirs. In absence of will, these are your legal heirs. So now I ask you the question again. Okay, for a Hindu female, I see some females also, it is spouse and children only, not the mother or the mother-in-law. So only the spouse and children. Okay, now my question to you is still again, risk that assets after your death might not fully pass on to your spouse, because if you die without a will, other people apart from your spouse are your legal heirs. So what do most of you want? Most of you want that after my death, my assets go to my spouse and after spouse to my children. Yes or no? But if you want to ensure that, you have to make a will. The default is not that. And in none of the religion it is like that. Neither in Christians nor in Muslims. In Christians, the wife share is 1/3, 2/3 goes to the children. In Muslims, the wife share is 1/8, rest goes to the children and parents. So in none of the religion, it goes to wife fully. So the default is not an option, sir. Default is not an option, right? Secondly, one more question I need to ask. How many of you are okay with giving one part of your wealth to your mother? How many of you are okay that one part of your wealth goes to your mother? Okay. So do you all play chess? Do you play chess? Who is a good chess player? A person who thinks 2 moves ahead before making a move. He's a good chess player. Here also think 2 moves ahead. After you, it goes to your mother. But after mother, where would it go? After you, one part of your wealth goes to your mother. It's very fine. But after mother, where does it go? To her legal heirs, who are your brothers and sisters. Now, how many of you are okay? So, this is about money, this is about wealth. So, one has to be very cautious about what is happening with one's money after a generation also. And so in case of female, I have just told, in case of female, if the female legal heirs are her husband and children only, and if the husband passes away, it goes to the children, right? There are other situations also which would which would make it necessary for you to have a will made from your spouse also. Because when I talk to many Hindu males, they say my spouse doesn't own anything. Why should she prepare a will? Most of the assets are in my name. So there are two reasons why you should ask your spouse to prepare a will. First reason is your spouse might not own much today, but one day she might own something big. That is after your death. So prepare a will for that day. Second is, as per the Hindu law, and it's a very interesting law. And the law says if a Hindu female dies without children, but a surviving husband, any wealth which she got from her parents does not go to the surviving husband. It goes back to the parents and parents' family. And that is only when she dies without a will. And that is the reason why your spouse should make a will. But if she dies by making a will in your favor, you get it in spite of you having no children. Right? That was about female intestate succession and reason why female should have a will. Right? So, any questions still here, anybody? Before I move ahead. Okay. So I have told you who are the legal heirs of a Hindu male, who are the legal heirs of a Hindu female. I have just told you all of that. So question is, at what age should you make a will? What is the right age to create a will? What is the right age for an Indian to create a will? Any guesses? Any guess? When is the right age to create a will for a normal Indian? 55, 60 today, okay. 18, no. Okay. So let's do a small exercise. Let's do a small exercise to find out what is the correct age to make a will. Right, just a small exercise. And by this exercise, each one of you would know what is the right age for you to create a will. So for this exercise, on your mobile phone, on a piece of paper, just write down your date of birth with the year of birth. Just write down your date of birth with year of birth. In DD, MM, YYYY format. First the date, then the month, then the year. Just write it down. Your date of birth in DD, MM, YYYY format. And I want to tell you the best age for you to write a will. All of you have written it. Now below this, just write. Below this, write down here. Write down your date of. Write down your date of death. Below it, write down your date of death. So when is the best age to create a will? Before you die. And nobody in this world knows when he's going to die. So the best day is today. Today. Actually, you are late. You should have made a will the day you created your first asset. You are lucky that you can still make it. We all are lucky that we are still have the ability to create a will. Many people die in this world or become incapacitated before making a will, and their family suffers because of their inaction. Would you like to remain in those people, or would you like to come to the group of people who have taken action and avoided dispute and have distributed their property by their wishes and desires? Right? So the best age to make a will is today. Why do most people not make a will? And I'll just run you through it. So people say I am married, so I don't need to make a will because my spouse gets everything. True or false? Utterly false. Apart from your spouse, there are other legal heirs I just told you. Then this also I hear from a lot of people. I have nominees for all my bank accounts, or I have joint accounts with my spouse, so I don't need to make a will. Friends, nominee is not the owner of the funds of the asset post your death. As per law, nominee is just the caretaker, trustee or distributor of the funds. For example, suppose you own a 20 lakh rupees fixed deposit, which is in your name and your wife is the nominee. Post your death, The bank's obligation ends by giving money to your wife because she is the nominee. But once she gets the money, as per law, she is obliged to divide it equally among all your legal heirs in absence of will. So suppose you have two sons and a mother alive, she will have to give 5 lakh rupees each to all four of them, including herself. So 5 lakh goes to her mother-in-law, 5 lakh goes to the elder son, 5 lakh goes to the younger son, and she ends up getting 5 lakh rupees. And that is law. And that is the law. So nominee is not the owner of the funds. Nominee is just the caretaker of the funds. Very clear. Then many people have this notion that if I have joint accounts, the survivor becomes the owner of the account, which is also wrong. Law says any asset which is jointly owned, whether it's a financial asset or a physical asset, both the owner own it 50% each or equally. If there are 3 people, equally. If 2 people, 50% each. And on the death of one, it's the obligation of the survivor to distribute the 50% share to the legal heir of the deceased. So both your options saying that I have nominees for all my bank accounts, I have joint account is wrong. If you have nominees, if you have joint account, please make a will in favor of the nominee. Please make a will in favor of the joint account holder, then it's okay. But if you die without doing it, you are leaving behind dispute. The third thing which people say, and for this I can't give you any explanation, and they say it's a taboo. If I make a will, I will die early. They are superstitious of making a will. So I can't do anything about it. I can only tell you what are the consequences of not making a will. This also, the fourth point also I hear from many people. My children will not fight over my assets. I have such good children. My children have such good relations among themselves that they will never ever fight over my assets. To parents who think like this, I just ask one question, and just answer me truthfully. When they were young, when they were kids, when they were small, and you bought them toys, did they fight over the toys? Did they fight over the toys you bought for them? And children who could not divide their toys when they were young, while you were alive, what makes you believe that they would be able to divide their inheritance when they are matured enough and you are gone? So don't assume agreement. Create an agreement before you go. Don't assume agreement. Create an agreement before you go. And the last reason people say is making a will is complex, it's time consuming, it's expensive. This is also false, sir. This is also false. Making a will is not at all time consuming, it is not at all expensive, and it does not take much effort to be on your part. Right? Do you know a will need not be type stamped or registered? You can make a will on a simple plain paper without typing it in your own handwriting, and there is no need to register it in a sub-registrar office. Only thing that is required to make a will valid is that it should be witnessed by 2 people who are not the legal heirs, who are not the beneficiaries in the will. So if you sign your will in front of 2 witnesses and 2 witnesses countersign it saying that they saw you signing, it's a valid document. But yes, typing it properly, putting it on a stamp paper, registering it in a sub-registrar office increases the power of the will, makes it difficult for somebody to challenge a will. So if you register it properly, put it on a stamp paper, type and draft it properly, then challenging a will becomes difficult. But even without all 3 of them, a will is a valid document. A will is a valid document. Right? A will can be changed any number of times. This is also, I ask, if I make a will, I will lose control over your property. Sir, you will not lose control over your property if you make a will. You will retain control over your property even after you die. Because you can change will any number of times. And just to change will, you have to make a new will. It's so easy. Every time you make a new will, the old will gets automatically cancelled. And even if you write on the face of a will that this is an irrevocable will, it still is revocable. Your son is forcing you to make an irrevocable will, that same day make an irrevocable will. Because even if you write on a will that this is irrevocable, it is always revocable, it's always changeable. By definition, a will has to be changeable. So how many of us have minor children? Type of 1 if you have a minor child. Type of 1 if you have a minor child. So the question for you especially is, what would happen in case both you and your spouse pass away while the child is minor? And I am not talking about your money. I am talking about the custody of the child. Who gets the custody of the child in case you and your spouse pass away while the child is minor? And I can tell you, it does not go to the grandparents automatically. It does not go to the maternal grandparents automatically. It does not go to your brother or her brother or your sister or her sister. As per law, there are only 3 types of guardian. Number 1 is the natural guardian. And only parents can be natural guardian to a child. Apart from parents, there is nobody who can be a natural guardian to the child. And in absence of parents, there is another type of guardian which we have, that is called the certified guardian. Certified guardian is a court appointed guardian. So after the parents pass away and the child is still a minor, the society becomes the guardian of the child. The society becomes the guardian of the child, and the society is represented by the district judge. Now it is the district judge prerogative whom to appoint the guardian, whom to give the custody of the child, and whom to give the wealth of the child to manage. And judges in India are very reluctant, very reluctant, giving custody of the children to any individuals. They prefer giving it to organizations over individuals. And what do you call those organizations who take care of children whose parents are not alive? You call them orphanages. You call them orphanages. So would you like your child to go to an orphanage if by chance both you and your spouse pass away while the child is a minor? For this, the law has given a provision of a third type of guardian, which is called testamentary guardian. Testamentary guardian is a guardian appointed by the children while they are alive. Sorry, guardian appointed by the parents while they are alive. So each parent has the power to appoint a guardian of their child while they are alive through a document which is called the letter of guardianship. If you create this letter of guardianship either jointly, or you should create it jointly, but in case you are not able to do it jointly, you can create it singly also. Then you have the power to appoint the guardian of your child while you are alive. And each one of us who has a minor child should appoint a guardian of their child while they are alive. That's the best gift you can give to your child. There is nothing in this world which is more dear to you, which is more precious to you than your children. And today you have left them unattended. You have left them unprotected because you have not created a letter of guardianship allowing somebody to be appointed as the guardian of your child in case both of you are not there in this world. Very important document of creating a letter of guardianship. All of you should create a letter of guardianship as soon as possible. This I have already told. Your beneficiary might lose their wealth to creditors, lawsuits, to divorcing spouse, or mismanagement of money. So you pass wealth to your children and the children might lose it to these people. And for these we can create a trust which is called an asset protection trust. If you transfer assets to the asset protection trust either during your lifetime or post your lifetime through a will, the separating spouses, creditors, legal liabilities would not be able to take away the assets left for your children or your grandchildren. Another question is, Another question is that after you die, the information you carry with you also dies. Where are your assets? Who are your creditors? Who are your debtors? What are the passwords to your important documents? All of that information is lost. And for that, you should create an asset information sheet which is passed to the next generation post your death. And you have to ensure that this information sheet only goes after you die. If it goes before your death, it's a bigger problem. Right? You have to ensure that it goes after my death to my next generation, to people who taking care of the wealth, so that they know how to operate my wealth, what are the different kinds of wealth which I have, where are those important documents kept, what is the way to reach to your bank accounts and other things, right? Whom do you owe money, who owes you money, things like that. That's called the asset information sheet. Very, very important document which you should get professionally created, because if you create it for with yourself, you will be missing out something, and whatever is missed is gone forever. It's not that, right? Yes, letter of guardianship is separate from the will, man. Disability concern: if you become incapacitated, how will your family members access your assets? Suppose you are in coma, you are mentally incapacitated. In such a situation, who would be able to operate your singly operated bank accounts? Who would be able to sell your mutual funds which are in single name? Who would be able to collect rent on a property? Who would be able to renew that rent agreement? And if a property needs to be rented out, which is in your name, who will be able to give it on rent? What have you done for that? And it's a bigger risk than dying, because if I die, my family suffers. If I become incapacitated, both me and my family suffers. So which is a bigger risk, dying or becoming incapacitated? Becoming incapacitated. And what have you done? What have you done to avoid the financial hassles faced by people after you, because you have become incapacitated? And what can you do? You can create something which is called a springing financial durable power of attorney. It's a special power of attorney created for financial incapacitation. Right? It's not your normal power of attorney. It's basically created for incapacitation. And it allows somebody to step into your shoes and operate your wealth as per the conditions set by you only after you become incapacitated, not before that. And the last point which I need to discuss is a very important point, which says that suppose, and you just tell me, is it risky or not? Risk of unwanted efforts made to save your life. If you feel that it's best to cease such efforts and let you die peacefully without pain. Suppose you became brain dead with no chance of recovering, and doctors keep you artificially alive because they have no other option. In this case, one, you have to bear a lot of pain. Second, there is a risk of your wealth going to a hospital or a nursing home. Is it risky? Being on a ventilator for more than 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and bearing that pain. And what can you do for that? For that, recently Supreme Court has allowed a document which is called a living will, or an advanced healthcare power of attorney. If you have created this living will or this advanced healthcare power of attorney properly as per law, the doctors would be forced to treat you as per your wishes and desires mentioned about your end of life planning in this living will. So this living will allows you to say at what stage should artificial life support be withdrawn from you. And if you have created this document, the doctors are forced by the law or given power by the law to withdraw life support given to you. Right? So I will not go further in this because it's taking time. So what we discussed today, I'll just sum it up before I go to questions. There are four documents which each one of us should have. One is a will, second is a letter of guardianship, third is a financial durable power of attorney, and fourth is a living will. Letter of guardianship is only required if you have a minor child, but otherwise all documents is required by all of us. Now, how many of us have all these four documents with them? Because if you have all four of them, then only would you leave inheritance for your children, not a mess, not a mess. So please, please plan your death, make your death beautiful, not a problem for somebody, right? That's my message to you. I am open with for questions.